We've got a college football game to talk about, a report on the two teams preparing to face each other in Monday's National Championship game.
I'm Tom Rinaldi with the Buckeyes in Columbus. After a recovery day for the players on Wednesday, the team was back at it early Thursday here at the Woody Hayes facility. Special teams meetings Thursday morning, followed by practice from 11 to 1:30. That was followed by a lifting session for the starters. It's all part of Urban Meyer and the coaching staff's plan to try to make this week as routine-driven and typical as possible. That means while on everybody else's calendar it's Thursday, the Buckeyes treat this as if it were Tuesday, following a typical and normal game week schedule. The final practice for the Buckeyes here in Columbus will be Friday morning. Then they'll make their way to the airport for the flight to Dallas. For more on the Ducks' preparation, we go to Eugene and Sam Ponder.
Tom, the Ducks are loving this week because it feels like a regular road game week. They've tapered back the physical activity a little bit today and tomorrow to try and get guys fresh for Monday. But that's a plan that's been in place since before the season even started. They practiced this morning, followed by a lift. They'll also have another practice and lift in Dallas. But it's all about preparing mentally at this point. This team leaves for Dallas tomorrow. They will arrive in Dallas at about 5:30, where they'll stay nearby the DFW airport in Grapevine. Now, College Football Live starts from North Texas.
Welcome to College Football Live here in Fort Worth. Joey Galloway working the grill here. The fine folks from Riata cook us up a nice little Texas-sized barbecue.
Let me flip that for you, Carter. I got that.
I don't know. His idea of cooking is a little bit of soup out of the can. I don't trust Joey's ability.
I got this.
Flipping the frog legs there.
You guys sit back and relax. I got this.
Oh, yeah, you got this. Chef Mike and Travis from Riata might have something to say about that. By the end of the show, we're going to be digging into some of this meat. But let's talk a little football first. Butch Davis, Joey Galloway, and Brian Greasy as well. Brian, first time I've seen you down here in Fort Worth. Just in time for the feast.
And I don't need an overcoat.
Nice.
Look at you guys.
Yeah.
You know,
Come
all these
on,
overcoats.
man. We're from the South.
Travis, Mike, they don't even have a coat.
All right, let's talk about this game and specifically. Just give me your thoughts on what you're expecting to see. What are you most intrigued by with this match?
I think it's going to be, first of all, I think it's going to be a great game. Entertaining game. I think a lot of offense. I think it's going to come down to these defensive lines in particular. Oregon's big guys up front, the twin timbers, as I like to call them, Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner. And then we know the Ohio State defensive line is fantastic. They're fantastic on their first line. But the reserves, who's going to step up? Because you can't have Michael Bennett, Adolphus Washington play 80-plus plays in this game. So I want to watch the tempo with those guys in the game.
You know, Butch, we talk about the matchup, whether it's the quarterback matchup, the coaching matchup. But what if I gave you a twofer? What if I said you have the choice between Urban and Cardale or Helfrich and Mariota? Which of those two, which combos are you taking?
As important as the coaches would like to think that they are, I'm taking the players, okay? I think that Marcus Mariota, he's proven, obviously won the Heisman Trophy. This is one unique, special individual. His ability to win games, not only with his arm, but certainly creating plays by design with his legs and his improvisation, being able to get outside the pocket. That's going to present Ohio State, I think, one of the biggest challenges. How do they make him play quarterback in the pocket and not let him create big plays?
I think
Coach, that's a heck of a job. That is a heck of a job of avoiding not picking a coach. You asked a coach to pick a coach. Great job.
Do you agree with him, or is he being modest? What about the job Urban has done, though, regardless of who's lining up under center?
I think both coaches have done an outstanding job, and I think that's why Coach didn't want to pick one of them, because you get to the national championship game, however you got there, your coach has done one terrific job. Now, we talk more about Urban Meyer because of the quarterback situation.
Right.
A little easier to get there if you got Mariota operating your system, but both guys have done a terrific job.
You know, and one of the things that's unique about both of them, they've both had to overcome a tremendous amount of adversity. Obviously, Urban with Ohio State going through 3 quarterbacks, that in and of itself is unbelievable. But then Oregon, you know, Mark Helfrich has had to go through the repair of the offensive line, the struggles that they had with the injuries there. Yeah, go ahead and flip it.
I got a couple.
Don't worry, it's already burned.
It's already burned. They've got it under control.
I got this. We're good.
But, you know, Greasy, when you look at Urban, all right, if he wins, This is 3 national championships with 2 different teams. Where does he sit now among the all-time great coaches in college football history?
It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to see the perspective on things when you're right in the middle of it. But make no mistake, if he's able to win, if he's able to win and have wins over teams like Alabama and Oregon at their peak this season with their 3rd-string quarterback, and for it to be the 3rd national championship, you would have to say that this year is one of the best coaching jobs in the history of college football.
I would agree.
You would agree with that?
No doubt about it.
Now, what about Helfrich, though, on the other side? Think about this. Now, Oregon lately, they've had a great tradition in college football, but it took a little while to get there. They've had some solid coaches over the years, but if Helfrich wins the national title, is he the greatest coach in Oregon history just simply because of reaching that accomplishment?
I think he's a phenomenally outstanding football coach. But one of the things, he's inherited a program that its culture, its environment was already in place. There was a lot of things, obviously. Mike Bellotti really went in there and really jettisoned that Oregon program to the forefront, where Urban, on the flip side of that, Urban's had to go in and completely change absolutely everything. Talking to Urban before the game last week a little bit, and he's talking about like, hey, this is maybe just a year too soon. We're young. We've got a lot of sophomores, maybe a little unexpected, obviously, with the quarterback situation. So I agree with Brian. I think that this is a terrific job by Urban Meyer.
Then you have to get his team back up. After that Alabama game, you look at the Oregon-Florida State game, it's a blowout in the second half, so they get to pull off a little bit. Mariota goes to the sideline in the 4th quarter. Ohio State down to the wire with a physical Alabama team, and all of a sudden you're preparing for a team that is on the opposite spectrum from speed standpoint, the rate of what they run their plays, not physical, and all the moving parts in the offense of Oregon will be completely different than what they've seen in Alabama.
And one other thing that you got to think and take into respect for this, from the standpoint, this may be the first time that Ohio State's defense has played an elite quarterback. This may be the first one playing Marcus Mariota, because if you look at the quarterbacks down the line that Ohio State has played, go ahead,
go right ahead over there.
Hey, I like mine medium rare.
Keep it going, guys.
But I just, I think that's a big part of it is that, that defense now for the first time is going to see somebody that not only is athletic, but this kid can play.
And the tempo. I mean, the tempo in the Big Ten is just not what it is and what Order's going to bring to. I mean, Indiana likes to go fast, but that's not the same offense.
Not quite.
All right, Joey's working the grill. He's got the quail, the sausage, the ribs, the shrimp. You got the steak out there. Looking good.
Stay away from the grill, Greg.
Coming up, we got a round table. I got to go inside. The coaches are waiting for us. You guys can stay out here with the smoked meat. Here we go. We're going to talk a little shop and a little Big Ten. Speaking of the Big Ten, what a job Urban has done. I'm going to take a closer look at the Buckeyes and the Ducks when we come back.
That steak's all folded up.
Football Live. We got a band today as well. The Trimble Tech Marching Bulldogs taking us out. We'll see you in a bit.
College Football Live is brought to you by Wendy's, proud sponsor of the 2015 John R. Wooden Men's Player of the Year Award.
Introducing the new innovation that excites. It's easy to create my BN.
When it comes to national championships, the Big Ten has spent the last 45 years in the fetal position. Just 2 national titles since 1968. The SEC won that many in the last 3 years, and 7 in the last 8. You can't blame the Big Ten for having trophy envy. It's tired of being a football punchline. But Ohio State can change all that. It has the guy who won it all twice while in the SEC. It has momentum. It has a chance. But the Buckeyes will have to do the big and small things, like dot the I and cross their T's. T as in title.
And we're inside here in Fort Worth. The Coaches Roundtable. There's a look at what these 2 teams, Oregon and Ohio State, will be playing for on Monday night. The National Championship Trophy presented by Dr. Pepper. And we're happy to have several coaches here in studio with us today. James Franklin, Brady Hoke, and Brian Kelly. And you guys, I'm sure, enjoying your time here in Fort Worth. Big Ten, it's a big game for the Big Ten. And, James, let me ask you, if Ohio State wins this game, does it in some way validate the season for the Big Ten? Because all season long, Big Ten was taking shots here and there that maybe they weren't as strong as the SEC. Maybe they weren't as strong as the Pac-12.
Well, I think the bowl season to start helped. I think the success that the conference had in bowl season is very helpful. And then having a team playing in the national championship is very, very important for us, for all of us. Perspective is a powerful thing. So I think Ohio State going out and playing well and finding a way to get the W would be great for all of us. But once that's over, I got to get back to focus on Penn State and what's good for Penn State.
Yeah, it'll literally be just the Monday night. You'll enjoy it. You'll get right back to work. Coach Hoke, what do you think about that?
Well, I think James is right. I think the bowl season and how the Big Ten played in the bowl games. And, Ohio beating Alabama in a game at the Sugar Bowl. I think the way that game went, I think, obviously, I'm from the Big Ten. I believe in the Big Ten Conference. And so I think, you watch the teams go out and play well. And I think on Monday night, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Will you be pulling for Ohio State on Monday night?
You know what? That's hard for me. But you know what? I think you got two great teams.
Yeah.
And I think both of the coaches have done a great job, their staffs and their kids, and how they've played.
Coach Kelly, what do you think about a quarterback making his third career start in Cordell Jones in a game this big? He's played so well in the first two games. What would you be concerned about having this situation?
Well, that he, goes away from the script. Obviously, he's been well coached. Coach Herman's done an incredible job, and Urban really has created an environment for him to succeed. The offensive line play is outstanding. They've got a great system that he's played into. You don't want him to kind of go off script here. Do what you've done, and I think if he sticks with that, it's been a pretty good recipe for success.
Have you been surprised with his play, knowing what you know about Ohio State and watching them all year?
Well, I think Coach makes a great point. A couple things. They've surrounded him with great talent. The offensive line was their weakness going into the season. They were young. They've grown dramatically as the season has gone. Everybody talks about the running back the last 3 games. The O-line's been a big part of that. They got great speed on the perimeter. I think that's a big part. And it also helps that he's 250 pounds. Because a couple of those plays would have been safeties, and he's as big and strong as the defensive line was able to drag out of the end zone. They were critical plays in the game.
Yeah, when you look at this Ohio State team now, and I know it hasn't been that long since you prepared to play for them, but would you prepare differently with this quarterback situation now than you did when you played them?
After watching what you've seen and from the throw game and the passing off of it, obviously we thought J.T. Barrett was very skilled in both areas. I don't know if you would take away one thing or the other from how Cordell plays, but I think for us, we'd probably play him a little bit differently than we would JT from the standpoint of maybe trying to take the box away a little more, the run game a little more.
Coach Franklin, what about you? Would you prepare differently? It's been a little while longer since you faced the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I think the thing that Cordell's special is his size, his arm strength. I think you're going to have to defend the deep ball. You can't give up the big play to them. Where I think Barrett might have been a little bit faster and be able to get to the edge and those types of things. Cordell's able to wear you down. I mean, there was a couple plays where he was coming downhill where you could tell people weren't real excited about tackling him, and that wears you down. Like we talked about before, too, those safeties, they're demoralizing. You think you got a guy for a safety, and he drags you out of the end zone, and then they're able to, with the speed on the perimeter, to the big play, the deep balls are a big part of what they're going to try to do.
Coach Kelly, you look at these two offenses, and they both like to go fast. I mean, Oregon is obviously known for speeding it up in that tempo, but it isn't like Ohio State and Urban Meyer are going to go slow. Are there similarities or more differences in terms of a defense preparing to play both of these offenses?
Well, both running games are predicated on some zone reads here. So both quarterbacks are going to be involved in the run game. So you have to account for both of them, which gives you obviously another dimension in the game. But that's the dimension here that makes this offense work. Both of them are heavy play action teams. So the run game has to be the element that gets these offenses going. So tempo is important, and obviously it's more important for Oregon relative to the tempo. But both of these teams have to establish the line of scrimmage to set up their play action game, because that's their lifeblood.
Who's going to do it better? In other words, pick the game.
Well, you know, I think certainly we all know these are the two teams that have played the best and most consistent. I think in these big games, it's important to settle your group down. I think the best quarterback is certainly Marcus. I think the experience that Urban Meyer brings to this game, I think that tips the scales, and I think Urban Meyer, I'm pulling that way in this game with an experienced head coach.
Coach Ho?
Well, you know, I think overall teams, I think the Buckeyes are a little stronger when you look at every position and how they've played. I think defensively the whole year, that front. So I probably would say Ohio.
Coach Franklin, clean sweep?
I have a Big Ten bias, obviously. I think what they've been able to do this year, they're peaking at the right time. I have a hard time going against Marcus Mariota because I have so much respect for not just his game, but I think he's a great example and model for all of our players. So humble, so hard work, and I've been so impressed with him. So Big Ten bias, but I have a hard time going against Marcus Mariota.
Coaches, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure.
Good
Thank
seeing
you.
Thank you.
All right, talking about Marcus Mariota, the numbers are ridiculous when you talk about some of the offensive stats he's put up. We're going to go inside Marcus Mariota by the numbers and look at some props when we come back.
Tune into AT&T Playoff Playlist Live.
Help yourself to happiness.
Jack.
No one can compete with Brutus. Brutus is the man.
The dog, no question. He's my homie, man. I don't really know Brutus, and he's ugly, kind of. He's not a cool-looking mascot.
It's not as cool as Brutus. It's a duck. I mean, what are we talking about? It's just a duck.
There was a time I was on my way to a final, and I just seen him walking by. He came and slapped me on the behind, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go get an A right now in this final because Puddles came.
If you told me a nut is supposed to get me amped up, I would tell you no, but that's what Brutus does.
College Football Live back here in Fort Worth, and Joey, looks like you did pretty well on the grill while I was away talking to the coaches.
Almost ready. Almost ready.
Your expertise, right? The folks at Riata and Chef Mike over there doing the barbecue for us today. We'll feast on that a little bit later on in the show. Time for the Chick-fil-A Impact Players, those players that will make an impact on Monday night's College Football Championship game. Certainly Marcus Mariota, the Heisman Trophy winner. You know all about that. How about Eric Dargan? Leading the Ducks in tackles and picks. Cardell Jones, of course, the quarterback on the other side. He's had a phenomenal 2 games. Will he make it 3? And Joey Bosa makes it all work on the defensive line for the Buckeyes. One of those 4 certainly could be a part of it. Time for Planning for Success, brought to you by Northwest Mutual. Certainly, when the Ducks plan for success, they think about Marcus Mariota. And guys, you know, we've got some props we got to take a look at. Looking at this game by the numbers, and certainly when you talk about Marcus Mariota, his numbers have been ridiculous this year from an offensive perspective. Averaging 347 yards per game of total offense. So we're going to go over-under here. And Grease, I'm going to start with you. Over-under in this game. Marcus Mariota, 347 yards of total offense.
Total offense? Yeah, not passing yards, just total offense. I would say yes, above.
Are you going over?
I'm going over. He's only been under 356 times the entire season, so I'm going to say he's over.
All right.
I'm going to agree. I think he's going to go over also, and I'm with Greasy. I don't think it's all going to be pass yards, but I think he will go over.
All right, we continue planning for success, brought to you by Northwestern Mutual. The running back, and I'm going to start with you, Buckeye, Ezekiel Elliott. He's been on fire these last couple of games. Unstoppable, with 230 yards, 250 yards. 154 yards rushing per game since the win over Michigan State. So he's been getting it done consistently. 230 versus Alabama, 220 versus Wisconsin. Over-under, 154 yards for Ezekiel Elliott.
I think he absolutely goes over. And everyone's talked about Ezekiel Elliott getting hot. The offensive line has been outstanding. They do that to Alabama. He gets 230. I think he absolutely goes over 150 against Oregon.
You know, the big plays against Alabama was the reason he was able to get 230 yards. You're right. I think, you know, Broyles Award winner and Tom Herman, but he needs to give an assist to Ed Warner, the offensive line coach, done an outstanding job. I think Ezekiel Elliott goes over as well.
Well, I'm going to break the trend. I'm going to be the outlier. I don't think Oregon's going to give up an 85-yard run. I think he's going to have a great game, and I absolutely believe that Ezekiel Elliott was the main reason that they were able to beat Alabama, because it made Ohio State multidimensional. They took the pressure off of Cardell Jones, but I do think 154 yards, I think he goes under.
All right, you know Oregon's lived off turnovers, 5 in the Rose Bowl against Florida State, so I'm going to throw it out to you. That defense, they're going to have to create turnovers because they're a bend, don't break. 2.5 turnovers in this game forced by the Ducks. Over or under on Monday night?
Over.
Over 2.5, so I hit
Over
at least 3.
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be under. I'm going under for sure.
I'm over because I think they're going to have an aggressive style. There's zone blitz. A lot of times they will blitz Cardale Jones, pressure on a young quarterback.
They're going to run the ball, Grace.
And they will drop the nose guard out. They did it a couple times with Jameis Winston. I think they
high and tight.
They're going to run the ball.
There you go.
And the ball high and tight.
Is only fumbled one time all year.
Exactly. Absolutely.
You're a lot better at that than you are at working the grill. Yeah. Admittedly, you know.
It's the points. It's the points.
But can he catch it? Can he actually catch it?
Chef Mike is a professional at working the grill over there from Riata here at Fort Worth. Hey, Chef Mike, how's it coming over there?
It's looking great. We've got the bone-in ribeyes, got the buffalo ribeye, got some jalapeno cheese grits. So, y'all ready to eat?
How about the quail?
We're ready to
Joey's
eat.
quail?
Joey, where's Joey's quail? Did you screw that up? They had to take it off the grill?
I told you, don't touch my quail. Don't touch my
We'll find that out coming up next. We're going to taste the barbecue here live from Fort Worth when we come back here on College Football Live. Don't go anywhere.
Planning for Success is brought to you by
Let's take these piggy.
The National Championship, Monday.
They dominated in every way.
This was a resounding statement.
Elliott off to the races. The dream continues for the Buckeyes.
The National Championship presented by AT&T, Oregon, Ohio State, Monday at 8:30 on ESPN.
Chip game presented playoff era Monday night in Arlington. Of course, it's on both ESPN and that great Watch ESPN app. The Ducks and Buckeyes will be making their way to this area on Friday, and I guarantee they'll be looking to get some barbecue, but probably not as good as the eats we've got right here, thanks to the folks at Riata and Mike and Travis. And what were you saying about the way this barbecue was prepared earlier?
Everything that Travis and Mike cook looks awesome. The stuff that Joey cooked is so raw.
Look at that quail. Hey, Coach, you ate quail before. Look at that quail leg.
I got to be honest now, Joey. I mean, I think it's all carry out and then microwavable dinners at your place. I'm not sure you're
I might be with Coach
chef.
on this
one.
one.
That's fine. Just don't. This is the plate I made.
Yeah.
I cooked this plate right here. Don't touch it, all right? Just don't touch it.
We'll take it off the grill.
Yeah,
Coach,
fine.
you're from Oklahoma. You know a thing or two about barbecue.
Well, absolutely. I've got a chance as a young coach going quail hunting, shot quail, and I love them. These are outstanding.
Now, you two guys as players, did you ever have any food, superstitions where you would eat something always before a game or not avoid something, maybe, Grease?
When you don't run a whole lot, like I never ran with the ball, you can eat whatever you want.
And very slow when he did run. But I'll tell you what, now that I taste this quail, no, I didn't eat anything before games. I didn't want to get into a superstition, but now that I taste this quail leg,
that might be it.
The way I cook this one right here, I might have to do this. I would do this. Quail
Coach,
leg.
You coached in Oklahoma, you coached in Arkansas, Texas, North Carolina. Any players, or you ever have any food superstitions?
Not really. I mean, I'm like these guys. Whatever they fixed was perfect. I just didn't like to be very nobody cooked as good as
Thanks, Coach.
Let's be honest, okay?
I think it was actually Mike and Travis from Riata who cooked it up. Gentlemen, thanks again. We appreciate all you did for us today. We're going to dig in. Everybody, if you make your way down here to Fort Worth, you got to stop by Riata because this food looks great. We're going to dig in.
How good is that?
We'll see y'all tomorrow, everyone. Let's enjoy, guys.
Cheese grits.
I need some of this right here.
With 19 seconds left, end around, and now a pass coming up. Spencer to the end zone. Thomas.
Did he get a foot down?
Yes, touchdown. Cardale Jones and the Buckeyes are shocking everybody right now. Ezekiel Elliott. It's caught. Touchdown, Ohio State. Devin Smith.
The Buckeyes will go to Dallas. It was a move that even Lazarus would be impressed with. After being declared dead back in September, the Buckeyes and the Big Ten Conference alive and well in January. Welcome to the Road to the College Football Playoff featuring Ohio State. Matt Schick along with Kevin Carter and Tom Luganbill over the next 30 minutes. These guys will give their breakdowns, their analyses, and make their pick for the national title game as Ohio State takes on Oregon. Also hear from Mark May and Matt Millen. But first, here's how the Buckeyes got here.
I think a lot of insiders pointed to this year being the year where Ohio State could compete with the SEC and try to get to a national championship game.
Worst fears realized today in
Chick along with Kevin Carter and Tom Luganbill over the next 30 minutes. These guys will give their breakdowns, their analyses, and make their pick for the national title game as Ohio State takes on Oregon. Also hear from Mark May and Matt Millen. But first, here's how the Buckeyes got here.
I think a lot of insiders pointed to this year being the year where Ohio State could compete with the SEC and try to get to a national championship game.
Worst fears realized today in Columbus with confirmation that Ohio State quarterback Braxton Miller is gone for the season. Barrett throws, and it's intercepted again, and that's going to be the ball game.
Eastern Division supremacy and a lot more at stake tonight. Quarterback keeper, design run, and Barrett scampers into the end zone. Barrett loops downfield, goes for Smith, touchdown!
And Barrett in trouble in the backfield is brought down for a loss. Barrett still down for Ohio State. And boy, that looks bad.
Barrett broke his right ankle today and is out for the rest of the season.
The whole state of Ohio is counting on Cardale Jones.
Caught! Touchdown! Got it for 6! Jones and Smith hook it up again. And Ohio State, Big Ten champions.
I don't think there's any doubt we're one of the top 4 teams in America.
Scarlet filling the Superdome.
We're leader. We're closer. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
Elliott leads the way. Touchdown, Ohio State. That one puts him right back in business.
And it's caught. Is it a touchdown? Yes!
Boy, did they ever do it with style, huh?
The last 5 minutes of the first half, first 5 minutes of the second half. Those are momentum-changing moments of the game.
Jones waited to the last minute and let it fly, and he's got Devin Smith. Touchdown. And the Buckeyes have the lead. Sims, quick throw, intercepted. Miller, defensive lineman Green. Touchdown. Elliott off to the races. Can they catch him? Touchdown. 85 yards. Hail Mary. Not answered. Intercepted. Ohio State's going to win it.
And the king of the SEC has fallen. The Buckeyes will go to Dallas and face Oregon for the national championship.
What an amazing journey. Ohio State seeking its 6th national title and its first since 2002. They also won the national title in 1942, 54, 57, and 1968. The win over Alabama gave the Buckeyes 12 straight wins. That's the longest active streak in the FBS. And under the direction of quarterback Cardale Jones, the Buckeyes averaging more than 50 points and 500 total yards per game in their last 2 games. Urban Meyer and Ohio State will face a very formidable quarterback on the other side in Marcus Mariota. Here's Urban Meyer on the Heisman winner.
Great player, great person, great leader, you can tell. Plays his best when it's hard. Plays his best. You know, the Michigan State game was a perfect example. He extends plays, and he's the biggest challenge. You know, tempo offense is really hard, but tempo offense with an average player, it's not that hard. He's the one that keeps the chains moving, and that's when tempo gets you.
The type of defensive front they run, you know, we have a lot of different things. We want to do a lot of different fronts, but out of 4 eyes, we can't do too many things with it as far as in the run game. But, you know, we have to, you know, buckle in and get ready for a tough game.
They move at such a high tempo to be able to get all your guys in the right spot, deliver the ball where it needs to be, hand it off when it needs to be handed off, and so on and so forth. He manages the game really well. Also, a lot of talent. He's 6'4", whatever he is. He's tall, he's big, fast, good decision maker. So the biggest thing is maybe hit him early and hit him often, make him start second guessing his decisions. And I'd say for the biggest thing for the defense is just get lined up.
It'll be Marcus Mariota's 3rd year starting for Oregon. This will be Cardale Jones' 3rd game starting for Ohio State, and he tweeted this out after the national championship, the national semifinal win over Alabama. 3rd string with the smiley emoticon, or emoji, as the kids like to say. Lots to smile about if you're in Columbus. Let's reflect back on the season as a whole. Tom, start with you. How did Ohio State get here to this point?
Well, they got here by maturing, by improving, and by believing in the process by which Ed Warner, the offensive line coach, Tom Herman, the offensive coordinator, and Urban Meyer placed upon them. This was not going to be an easy path. Go back to the Virginia Tech loss. It wasn't just about J.T. Barrett's first start. It was about a young team around him, a young Dontre Wilson, a young Ezekiel Elliott, a young Jalen Marshall, an offensive line that was in complete disarray, got embarrassed. And if you think about the criteria that the College Football Playoff Committee set forth, they were going to place an emphasis on how teams improve. What are you now versus what you were before? So I think as this team gelled, as they matured, as they became more productive and efficient, all of a sudden their chemistry and their confidence started to really elevate. And that's really what made the difference, because we can talk an awful lot about teams that are playing at their best, but when are you playing at your best? I made a reference to Mississippi State late in the year that they peaked too early. They were peaking, and they had that great run in the middle of the season, and then they went on the downhill slide. Ohio State's best performances came exactly when they needed them to, despite injuries, despite clutter and distractions, all of those things. This team, I think, just kind of banded together. And they got here through coaching, improvement, and experience.
One of the things we liked about this College Football Playoff Selection Committee, we thought we'd have a better chance of getting the teams playing their best football at the end of the year. Oregon, Ohio State, certainly maybe no two teams playing better football than those two. How would you describe, Kevin, the journey Ohio State has taken here up to this point?
Well, it's one of evolution, and I think what Tom spoke to as far as their belief in themselves playing their best football now, Urban Meyer has groomed this team and has been telling this team all along, you will be relevant, you will be playing meaningful football at the end of the season. And I think that attitude permeates through everything they do. When you look at how impressive they are, their offensive line blocked Alabama interior runs, off tackle, and around the perimeter. Their offensive line protected Cardale Jones as he attempted to go downfield and try to strike them on the deep ball. And the utilization of so many different offensive weapons. I mean, that credit goes to Tom Herman and what they're doing from a schematic standpoint, but it goes to just who they are in total. I mean, when you look at the players they have, how far they've come, the coaching that they're receiving now, playing their best football and utilizing so many different talents, right now, this part of the season is really impressive.
And we'll get more on Cardale Jones in just a little bit. Matt Millen, Tom, you guys will break down the quarterback play there from the, quote, third-string quarterback there in Ohio State. But it wasn't just the quarterback issue. You mentioned it, the offensive line, replacing Carlos Hyde at running back, Ryan Shazier, Bradley Roby defensively as well. What about defensively, Tom, and the maturation that this team has taken?
Well, they may have actually become more talented on the perimeter with the likes of Eli Apple. If you go into the end of last year, which I covered an Ohio State game at the end of the year, this was not a very good team at the linebacker spot. Not a lot of depth, not a lot of experience. What do they do? They go out and they recruit the heck out of the linebacker position. And who are two of the more premier guys in that front now? Raekwon McMillan and Darren Lee, who's been making plays all over the field. You know, when you look at the defensive front, Urban Meyer has built this team similar to the way that he built it at Florida. Interior front guys, an edge pass rusher that can wreak havoc in Joey Bosa. So the front seven and the perimeter, particularly on the edges, with the likes of Eli Apple, they've matured, they've developed, but they've also gotten more talented. They might be younger at some spots, but they've gotten more talented. And keep in mind, when they haven't had a dip in quarterback production, they haven't had to go on the field more than necessary, and that's made a big difference.
Kevin, as a guy who's in the locker room with some championship teams there at Florida, I think we'd all agree there was a turning point that happened there after that loss to Virginia Tech. How does a coach instill belief in a team that just lost to Virginia Tech that, you know what, things are going to be okay and we can win every game in front of us?
If I knew exactly what it was, I would write a best-selling novel and retire from everything that I was doing and go on motivational speaking circuits around the country. What Urban Meyer has been able to accomplish, I think, is immeasurable. This is what sets him apart as a coach in college football. This is why that his name has to be brought into the conversation of talking about the best colleges, the best coaches in college football right now. You have to put his name in that category because of how he has helped and made and willed this team to believe. The evolution of all the players at the various positions, Tommy just spoke of it, and the linebacker position. When I looked at them earlier in the season, I was like, man, these guys have to be better at linebacker because they're basically the glue that connects the front seven, like the front four, which is very talented with a very athletic and agile back end. But they're the ones who get a lot of the pressure put on them Evolution's at every position. That's all coaching. That's all Urban Meyer.
You mentioned Urban Meyer. Coming up, we'll dive into Urban Meyer, his legacy. Look, one win away from his 3rd national title. What would that mean for that legacy? And this his best coaching job.
It takes a little something special to be a great player. We don't want to coach average. I don't want to be around you. Why be around average?
His father, Bud, studied 3 years to be a priest before he met Urban's mom, who escaped Nazi Germany as a child. They settled on the banks of Lake Erie. Bud made his children study Latin, and when Urban struck out looking in high school, Bud made him run home. Much has changed in Ashtabula, but the waves crashing against the shore at night still sound like a cheering crowd.
But given the fact that just about 24 hours ago, we had word from Jameis, his camp, that it would be after the national championship game that we would hear. So Mayday, not really a surprise, but what do you think of the news?
I think Jameis Winston this past season did a better job of padding his NFL stats, and what he did, he impressed the scouts more this year than he did last year because he had freshman wide receivers. He had musical chairs on the offensive line. That's what's going to happen when he gets to the NFL because he's going to go to a bad football team. So they know that he's already been in that situation where he's got to struggle, he's got to come through, and he found ways to win, and he played that way this year. So I think he impressed them that way. The other thing is, to me, on the field to play, barring Andrew Luck, I think he's the most NFL-ready quarterback to come out in the last decade because he can make those tight passes. He can make great decisions. He can read defenses. This is on the field to play, barring Andrew Luck, because I don't think anybody's like that kid.
But last decade, though, you agree with that? That's high praise.
It is high praise. We can go back and look. There's Matt Ryan. There's some other quarterbacks, but I don't think you're far off. And I think the point is this. Jameis Winston is the most NFL-ready quarterback in college football. He played better this year, I thought, and I agree with you, Mark. He played better this year than he did last year. The statistics tell a different story simply because of everything around him. I thought he started to force the ball a little bit late in the year because he was trying to do too much. But in a pro system, the way he manages the pocket, the way he senses and feels the rush, the way he can avoid the rush, and most importantly, the anticipation throwing to spots. Marcus Mariota can throw to a man, to a receiver, when his numbers are facing him and hit that man 100 out of 100 times. So can Winston. The difference to me so far in studying the tape is that Winston can find a spot down the field and lead his receiver to it, anticipate it, and that's what you have to do to be successful in the NFL.
I think the other thing, too, I think you could be looking at the next Ben Roethlisberger. When you compare the styles of play, the way guys bounce off of Ben, they do the same thing with Jameis Winston. Even in the play in the Rose Bowl, when it was 4th and 5, he's trying to make a play, that was sort of reminiscent of a Big Ben play where it could be an incredible turnaround. He escapes and makes a play down the field, which he's done several times, or it could be a disaster. But to echo your point, when I was a rookie in the NFL, Steve DeBerg, longtime NFL quarterback, he described to me, he's like, look, the definition of open just changed. In high school, it's, the guys running down the field wide open. In college, there's a little bit of a gap. In the pros, it's this much. I mean, there is this much. And I think the difference between Mariota and Winston is Winston has been throwing to guys really tight windows, so it won't be as much of a transition for him.
Coach, what advice do you give to Jameis Winston at this point in time as he's now made that decision?
Grow up. Stay out of trouble. He's going to be as scrutinized over the next 3 or 4 months as any person has ever been in their life. We had a lot of pro players at University of Texas and North Carolina, and it's amazing when they start looking at background checks and the FBI is involved and the scrutiny, the questions, the interviews. He can't do anything wrong. He can't go into the wrong party. He can't be around the wrong bar because he's big, he's good looking, and he's the one that's recognized at the party. So I think he knew he was coming out. I think they were trying to figure out when was the best time to go ahead and make that statement publicly. Today was as good a time as any. Get it over with. Right. Now he's got to go to work. I saw Vince Young come out early. He was after his 2 years, just like Jameis. And I saw a smart young man like Jameis, a big, tall, good-looking athlete like Jameis, but Vince would tell you today It's not an easy transition because of all the things you deal with in the NFL. So I don't think we're just talking about football here, because I agree with the comparisons of Ben Roethlisberger, maybe faster. He made a throw going to his left in that bowl game, the Rose Bowl, that was unbelievable for a touchdown. You can't make that throw. And he made it so easily. And he gets away from people. He's strong. He can stay up. He
also makes mistakes, though. I mean, to the point that he has threw a lot of interceptions this year. All year long, it seemed we were talking about the holes he was digging for himself or for his team, and he was also pulling his team out of those holes.
Young, unreliable freshman wide receivers, not being at the right place at the right time. And the other thing about this, when you get to the NFL, it's different than college, because guess what? They can take money away. You make mistakes.
Yes, they can.
It's a lot different now.
Well, hopefully we don't know. I mean, we don't know what motivates him and what is going to get him to grow up. And if he has, that's the other thing we're going to see for the next 4 months. Psychological tests, the interviews his coach talked about, the FBI getting involved, security for each team, and they're trying to figure out, is it just a maturity issue? Is it something that he'll grow out of and that we can help him grow out of? Or is there something maybe psychologically wrong with him, and how do we handle that? It'll be interesting to see, but at the end of the day, we have 4 months to talk about it, but NFL teams have 4 months to talk themselves into it. And you just wonder, with Tampa Bay at 1, with Tennessee at 2, Washington at 5, the New York Jets at 6, I can't imagine that Jameis Winston's going to be on the board when we get to number 7. And I think it's more likely than not that he's the first pick in the draft.
But if you look at the big picture down the road for Jameis Winston, look what Jimbo Fisher's been able to do with the quarterbacks that he's coached, not only at Florida State, but some of the guys that got drafted in the NFL. It's almost buyer beware. Will he break the mold? Because if you look at the success that these quarterbacks have had, it hasn't been very much. E.J. Manuel on the bench, Christian Ponder on the bench. Look at Matt Flynn. You look at these quarterbacks. First-round picks, Jamarcus Russell, haven't made it in the NFL. They've gotten there, which is great, but they haven't made it in the league. So is it buyer beware?
Well, to Todd's point, we've got 4 months to talk about this, and I'm sure we'll be doing it just about every day. We'll be doing it a lot on College Football Live, that's for sure. But we got a game to talk about coming up next Monday night. Ohio State and Oregon, the National Championship game, presented by AT&T. That's Coach Urban Meyer. Tom Rinaldi is going to visit with him next when we come back. The championship game presented by AT&T, Oregon and Ohio State next Monday night on ESPN. And speaking of planning for success, that's exactly what Urban Meyer is busy doing right now. Tom Rinaldi visiting with the Ohio State coach in Columbus.
Coach, a 15th game in a season, obviously a great opportunity, but how do you balance the need for conditioning against their pace of offense versus the importance of getting the players rested?
Oh, that's occupied a lot of our thought. This is uncharted waters, and I didn't, in the summer you heard about it, you just didn't give much thought to it. Now it's here, it's real. These players' bodies, we have, I think, 12 players out, season-ending injuries that wears and tears on people. And then how do you prepare a defense at that tempo with the 16-second shot clock? So we did a lot of that. We're going to have to start backing off now, though.
Given your own development and knowledge of the spread offense, how does that help in preparing the defense against Oregon?
I'm cautious. We have very good defensive coaches. Luke Fickell and Chris Ash run it, and they're very good. We have a great relationship, and I'm more of a this bothers me. This I don't like this, and this is
like what?
I'm not telling you, but there's certain things that bother offenses, and the two offenses are somewhat similar. I haven't really studied them that much. I'm so busy worrying about because they run a very unique, unorthodox defense too. Right. So the time has been spent on that, but I just try to give them ideas of what bothers us.
It's almost impossible to describe Cardale and what's happened to him, but he could have won the conference title game, the Sugar Bowl, and the national championship in his first 3 starts of his collegiate career. How is he managing all this attention and this responsibility this quickly?
He's incredible. When I first, because I was really worried. I mean, we all were. He goes in against Wisconsin, and he makes a mistake, and to show his maturity, he comes walking off, and I was ready to dive into him now. And Tom Herman does a brilliant job with him, and I look right at him, and before I say a word, he said, "Coach, that was my fault. It won't happen again." And I thought to myself, Steve Young has a great piece out there about leadership, about accepting responsibility, so those who are following you are like, he's not a blamer. He's not and he can't be a blamer. And it was great. After that point, he's been rocking and rolling and taking care of his business. And he's not played perfect, but he owns mistakes, and I think it's the key to how he's handling it.
How hard is it to keep routine?
Oh, it's not hard. That's we are all. It's to the point of
insanity we keep routine around here. Our players believe in it, and you know, since day one, there's never been a great player that doesn't have a routine. There's certainly never been a great team that doesn't have a routine, and we're doing the best we can, and we've kept it pretty close.
We appreciate the time. Eventually get out of this cold and safe travels to Texas. We'll see you there.
Thanks, Tom.
So Coach Meyer visiting with Tom Rinaldi there just moments ago. This game, you know, all the talk about this player, this unit, that unit. Is this game going to be won in the trenches, or is it going to be won in space, in your opinion, Coach?
Danny and I saw Ohio State practice in preseason, and it was eye-opening because their offensive line was very average at best, and their defensive line was very good. And Braxton Miller was up for the Heisman. The other two quarterbacks really struggled in practice, and they weren't even in the picture at that time. 3 days later, everything changes. I think this goes down to the offensive line at Ohio State versus the defensive line at Oregon. The offensive line at Oregon, they've been really good when they've been healthy. The defensive line at Ohio State's been really good throughout the year. The other two have been in question some. So which one of those two plays well? And then do they give Cardell enough opportunities to go ahead and play? We just laughed and said Cardell should go to the NFL. I mean, if he wins the conference championship and he wins the Sugar Bowl and the national championship, what is left?
Mayday, I have a feeling you're going to agree with Coach that it's going to be won in the trenches, and if that's the case, doesn't this favor Ohio State?
Well, absolutely. If you look at both of these teams, and if you want to talk about Ohio State, the way that this offensive line performed, not only throughout the season, they matured like a fine wine. They've gotten better each and every game, particularly their last two games. And you can run the ball for better than 300 yards against Wisconsin. But I think what really impressed me is Ezekiel Elliott and this offensive line get into the second level, rushing against Alabama for over 280 yards and almost 7 yards a crack. To me, that was super impressive. They're just getting better and more confident all the time. In Oregon, they're getting healthier. That's the key for the Ducks. Their line's getting healthier.
Yeah.
I love you guys. I love the offensive line.
But you're a quarterback guy. There's no question.
It's going to come down to the skill positions, specifically the quarterbacks. And I think you look at the way they handle the ball every play.
So
I think one of the things that is true. I didn't even let that go by, right?
The quarterback can't get it unless the center gives it to him, right?
One of the things that Oregon does well is they go the tempo. They run a system which neutralizes the defensive line to some extent. I mean, they're not even probably going to block Joey Bosa or whoever's playing on the edge. David Pollock's done a fantastic job of breaking that down. So they neutralize a lot of that or disadvantage they potentially could have up front. I will say this. If Ohio State can run the football the way they did against Alabama, take the pressure off Cardell Jones, keep the ball out of Mariota's hands in that Oregon offense, that could be the big difference.
I was surprised that Alabama couldn't stop the run and make Cardell Jones throw the ball. That's what everybody said all week, and Alabama's got good players. They're obviously good defensive coaches, great defensive coaches, and they ran the ball.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest question to me. Can Oregon make Cardell make the plays to win the game?
Well, when we come back, Coach Gary Patterson is going to join College Football Live. This is what they're going to be playing for next Monday night. National Championship Trophy presented by Dr. Pepper. Oregon and Ohio State. It all comes down to this. We're live here from Fort Worth. Chris Cotter along with Mac Brown and Coach Gary Patterson from TCU. Congratulations on that Peach Bowl win. What a great game.
Here are the keys, man. Before I joined ITT Tech, I feel like I know I
call 866-286-1180 or visit us on the web. ITT Technical Institute. Education on the web. ITT Technical Institute. Education for the future.
The National Championship, Monday.
They dominated in every way.
This was a resounding statement. To the races. The dream continues for the Buckeyes.
The National Championship presented by AT&T, Oregon, Ohio State, Monday at 8:30 on ESPN.
College Football Live. We're live from Fort Worth, getting you set for the National Championship game. The Death Star in Eugene, Oregon Athletic Facility there. That's where we find Sam Ponder with an update on the Ducks as they prepare for the National Championship game presented by AT&T. They'll make their way here on Friday along with the Buckeyes, and Sam is in Eugene. Sam, how are you?
I'm doing all right, Chris. The Ducks practiced this morning from about 9 to 11, followed by a media availability time where I got to catch up with several of these players who vividly remembered their experience at their last national championship. And even though they weren't able to contribute as redshirts, there was a lot that they took from that experience that they feel like can help this team now. I specifically caught up with redshirt senior center Hronis Grasu, who told me there were a lot of things he remembers from that day that he thinks will help his team now.
To just relax, calm down, and just enjoy every single second of it. You know, that week we had the best practices we ever had all season long, but once we got to the game, it kind of just froze and, you know, tightened up, and we're, you know, too afraid to make mistakes. And the only thing we could do this year is just play loose and have fun and play together.
This team is such a reflection of both their quarterback and their head coach, because guys told me that this year the real difference in this team is how loose they've been, and that's because Coach Helfrich just lets them be themselves, and specifically Marcus Mariota, who can never get outside of the zone when he's on the field, never gets upset, always stays calm. So I asked Hronis, a guy who knows him better than anybody, being his center, I said, does he ever get upset? He said, not on the football field. The only time I've seen him get angry is on the golf course when he makes a bad shot. And I think everybody in America understands what that's like.
Especially May Day, or when they run out of food at the buffet table. Coach, this team is defensively, this Oregon team seems like they're very similar to yours. They make a living off of turnovers. Would you categorize them as the same way?
Yeah, schematically they're different. They're more of a three-man front doing it, but yeah, they run to the football, they change up coverages, and they want to cover down on people. They're going to make you beat them. Oregon's not going to beat themselves defensively.
Turnovers too, Coach. I mean, this is the type of team that they'll bend a little bit, but the turnovers make the difference.
Yes, the game last week was much closer than the score because of the 5 turnovers as compared to 1, and the Oregon turnover was late in the game and wasn't a factor. So, but this team has forced turnovers throughout the year. Marcus Mariota, the face of their offense, is taking care of the ball, and I think that'll be a key on Saturday.
No doubt. Turnovers, absolutely. And quarterback play, of course, Mayday.
Offensive line play and turnovers.
I knew it was going to come around full circle with that one. Coach Patterson, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Congratulations on a great year. See you tomorrow, everyone.
Call 877-GO-RAPID or rapidadvance.com.
Your money's here.
The Duck getting a workout as Winston must now answer again, down a dozen points after Mariota's 56-yard touchdown pass to Carrington. Wilson's going to bring it out, or thought he was. Now he is. A double hesitation by Jesus Wilson. Now he gets free momentarily and is driven out at the 12-yard line.
It's the ball here. When he initially stepped out, remember, it's not his foot.
Yep.
I have poor credit and cannot get a traditional loan.
With CashNet USA. Dusk in Southern California. Nice view from DirecTV's aerial coverage.
A remote start starting at $199 installed.
Who should Tampa take with the first overall pick?
Lisa, right now on my board it would be Mariota. Now, if you'd asked me that a year and a half ago, I'd have said definitely Winston. He may not have Andrew Luck's grade, but it would be close enough to guarantee him to be the #1 pick overall if that team needs a quarterback. And obviously now, #1 Tampa, #2 Tennessee, the Jets at 6 all need quarterbacks. So you look at it and say it should be Winston, but it's not right now because, as we've talked about, Lisa, over the last X amount of months, the off-the-field concerns are there. We've never had this for an elite quarterback. Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, the list goes, Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck. You think about Aaron Rodgers, all the great quarterbacks in the NFL you never have to worry about. Jameis Winston, based on past history, you do. And what he's got to answer, and you have to reconcile, is this over and done with? Can he be an effective CEO of your organization? If you think he can, performance on the field this year, not as good as last year, but there were some personnel issues that led to that. You saw his impact in the game against this past week against Oregon. I mean, if it wasn't for a drop ball and a fumble, they're right in that football game. So Jameis had nothing to do with them losing the way they did. Forget that 4th down play. He tried to make a play. So for Jameis, it's all about what he can do away from the field, and all that investigative work that Brian Griese and Todd McShay talked about, that will determine where he goes in late April.
Mel, as you're talking about all of his off-the-field issues, which will be much discussed, it comes to mind, recently in this past rookie season, Johnny Manziel, those off-the-field issues following him into Cleveland. How much will teams really look at that and take that into consideration?
Liz, it's huge. I mean, for a quarterback, I mean, this is the guy that is, as I say, the CEO. He sets the tone for everything else that goes on within that organization. As a GM, you don't get a 3 o'clock call in the morning about a quarterback. As I said, what's the common denominator with all the great quarterbacks? And I think going way, way back, as long as I've been doing this, which is about 36 years, you never had to worry about that with an elite quarterback. You say, well, Ryan Lee, that was after the fact. That wasn't before. So I think when you say prior to, when you're auditioning for a #1 spot in the draft, not a first-round spot, but a #1 overall spot, your audition hasn't gone well. What happens, as Brian and Todd alluded to, once you get the big money, once you are guaranteed that type of dollar figure, then all of a sudden what happens then? If you can't do that before, when you're trying to put your, or should be trying to put your best foot forward, what happens then? That's something all these teams are going to have to think about.
Mel Kiper Jr. joining us. Great perspective as always. Thanks a lot. Now, our coach, Herm Edwards, here with us for more as Winston is now in. Waiting, of course, as Marcus Mariota has not made his decision. As I mentioned, many expect he will do so. You're sitting there. You're a head coach. You need a quarterback. Who do you want between those two?
Well, obviously, they both have tremendous talent. If you're looking at both of them right now, who's the most ready would be Jameis Winston, because he's come out of a pro offense at Florida State, and that's the thing that's intriguing about the guy. But as Mel has said, he has a history of obviously some immaturity incidents that he's had, and the one that's most concerning for all the organizations will be the sexual assault deal. I mean, that's the one that's the red flag. All these other things are immaturity. And you can look at that and you say, hey, well, quarterback shouldn't act like that. Well, today's world is different than 10 years ago. Okay, everything is in view. Now, he's got to be smarter than that, but that would be the one that everyone's going to dive into to make sure, what is this? Okay, so I think Mariota's a guy that has a wonderful upside. But you have to really constrict the offense early for this guy, because he's in an offense that gives him the ability to open the windows, where Jameis Winston finds the windows because of the offense that he plays in. So they're both talented players. The history tells you that generally Heisman Trophy winners, 50% of them make it, 50% don't. And that's just kind of the rule of thumb. And so we can say Jameis Winston on the field has been a very good player. He's 26-1. Mariota and that system's been a very good player. So I think you wrestle with that, and that's what all the coaches are going to wrestle with. Lovie Smith, I know personally, he's going to have to sit down with Jameis, also go see his head coach and have a conversation with him. I think that's the key, to talk to Jumbo and say, look, what's going on with this kid? Give me the real story. And I think a coach has to be able to handle the criticism you might take when you take Jameis Winston, because all of these things are going to come up. And you have to have a strong organization to do that. And remember, wherever these guys go, I think here's the key, what people don't realize. These guys have always won. They're going to losing teams. They're going to lose again for a while. This is not instant success. This is not an Andrew Luck story. These guys aren't Andrew Luck by any stretch of the imagination, where you can just turn the franchise around in one season. They're going to lose some. How do they deal with that? We don't know.
You'd mentioned Winston and those off-field issues. We do need to be clear he was not charged in those sexual assault allegations, but those will continue to come up, all of the off-the-field issues. We went through them before we started these segments. Herm, thank you for your perspective as a head coach. You will be sitting there wondering what could be coming next. What am I going to deal with? You just don't know. Herm, you also coached Winston back in 2012. I have to mention the Under Armour Bowl.
And he was fine.
And he was fine, and he put up some points for you,
Put up a lot of, and you know what? He won again. Just keeps winning. Every time he goes on the football field, he wins.
Certainly one heck of an arm, that's right. Now, Winston, of course, a former Heisman winner, for perspective at the next level. Herm mentioned it. Currently 5 active Heisman-winning quarterbacks in the NFL. None of them has a career record above 500. The group had 0 combined playoff wins until Cam Newton and the Panthers defeated the Cardinals, which happened just last week.
That's scary to look at.
It's the truth. And now before he takes on Andrew Luck for a third time.
On defense, yards per rush, just 4.6, but 7 yards a rush on the perimeter versus a team in Alabama that prides itself in setting the edge. So how does Ohio State now handle Oregon's ability to get to the edge? Well, for both Oregon and Ohio State, one of the challenges is when you look to the semifinal game, Kevin, you don't see a lot of formations and personnel groupings that you're going to see in this matchup. So as we turn on the tape here and we look at Alabama on offense, this is Ohio State on defense. You're going to have a run to the boundary. We're going to talk about outside runs or runs that are meant to go to the outside. We're going to run this thing through and then bring it back and show you what stands out to us.
Now, this is not just about setting the edge, because they actually run this inside of the tackle. It's about setting the edge in your gap control. This is a two-part problem. Look at Adolphus Washington. First of all, he does not get off in the A gap to take pressure off of the linebacker Joshua Perry. The second thing is Joshua Perry doesn't come downhill right now to meet Ari Kwanjo in the hole. They could, both of these two players can make this play themselves by getting in their gap control, the A gap and the B gap.
All right, so let's note two things. The fullback that's offset to the near boundary side here, and Amari Cooper. Now watch Amari Cooper. He's going to release inside. He's going to run the over route. This action out of the backfield coming here forces these guys to delay just a little bit, because what this looks like is play action pass off of a boot going this way. So that delays the reaction of these two linebackers. This backside linebacker right here should not be blocked by the offside guard, and he is.
Correct. It creates leverage. They're just a step slow. Ari Kwanjo gets off the line, and he's on Joshua Perry. The outside defender here is taken totally out of the play because, of course, he's got one of the best receivers in college football crossing his face.
And look at the safety. He goes inside as well. So now
two guys affected
by him. And again, it's all from this backfield action right here. And that's a receiver. That's Christian Jones for Alabama. So if we were to take this and make this an Oregon set, we backed up the quarterback, maybe offset the back here, or keep him in the pistol. Now you got a little bit more of a spread-looking set. But as we let this thing go, it's just a really good job by Alabama. But the misdirection in the backfield action for Alabama there is something you're going to see from Oregon as well.
The window dressing creates problems for them.
All right, so now we're going to have motion out of the tight end, and you're going to go over here to the boundary, the field side. Short side of the field is here. Now linebacker flow. These are the guys that we want to focus on. And this receiver right here is going to end up making the play and taking out two dominoes.
And again, creating leverage. Now, this is truly an outside run all the way. They're pulling the guard, they're getting out, pulling the tackle rather, getting out on the formation. And the culprit here is another outside linebacker. He has a chance to make this play, but when you undercut blocks, anytime you go on the inside, taking the easy way out as a defender, you give them exactly what they want, which is leverage on the outside.
So what we're saying here is if he keeps his outside shoulder free here and he scrapes and spills over the top,
it forces it wider. Now you force him to run east and west instead of north and south. Derrick Henry never breaks stride. He never stops to go outside to bounce to the perimeter. He runs straight downhill, and by his fourth step, he's running downhill already towards the sideline.
And Royce Freeman for Oregon is going to be a little more shifty, a little more explosive, probably going to get to the perimeter a little bit quicker. So much of the angles and the sifting through the wash or the trash, if you will, is going to make a big difference for Ohio State on defense. And again, you don't see a lot of those formations from Alabama, so you got to practice it, you got to deal with the tempo, then you still got to be assignment savvy. Coach Matt Millen, when it comes to this type of offense and you're preparing from a linebacker with all the misdirection, how do you account for all of this and the speed of play?
Well, there's a lot of things that go on, but 2 points that Coach and I want to make. Number one, it's know your job and do your job. And number two, it's make good decisions under pressure. And that's the hard part. And Coach, let's just speak a little bit about what exactly the offense is trying to do to you defensively.
Well, I think the first thing, too, we got to cancel the run first. From a defensive standpoint, you got to take away something. So here, this was that first play where they're going to reach block here. Everybody's coming on. They've got a cross-flow action in the backfield, which is difficult on the linebackers. And why is that? Tell me.
Well, because as soon as you have, first of all, you have to understand, this is man coverage. So that locks this guy up right away, okay? You also have the safety because this is number 9, Amari Cooper. So they were trying to keep 2 people on him all the time. So as soon as he goes inside, they're going to follow that, and he has to honor that. That's the first thing. The second thing is both these backs have these backers have these backs, and this backside backer, who would normally be able to flow all the way across, is given the quarterback with the boot. And so when you're looking at this, they do that cross action, there's a read involved there somehow. Somebody has to pick up one or the other. Normally what we would do is I'll take the widest to this side, you take the widest to that side. But in the middle, right in here, there's a decision to be made.
And that hesitation right here allows these linemen to get up and angles to block this guy. Plus, the inside release here weakened the edge support. The corner and the safety both came off. The Ed got blocked outside, but these guys right here, the guys that have to stop that play because it was just a power run play to the weak side, and they should be scraping. And you're right, the fact that this offensive guard could block this linebacker that should never happen in the real world. But he was held up by the fake because they do run a tremendous amount of bootleg off of that same look.
So there's a lot of things involved, but it all comes down to a couple things. Knowing your job, doing your job, making good decisions under pressure, and then part of it is the call that's relayed into you because you still have to honor your coverage. You can't get beat until you make the call. This one right here, as soon as he went back in, there is a replace principle that has to be involved that they didn't do. They broke the play down, and the defense wasn't able to handle it. But in the end, this is a very doable play. It just didn't work.
The question's going to be a very doable play on paper. Now add pace and tempo to the play, and can you get lined up, can you read your keys, and are you ready to roll?
The window dressing and the speed is what compromises your technique on defense.
All right, we take a look now at Ohio State's pass rush. This is a football team that has been able to get after the passer, just rushing 4, have been solid in the back end with their defensive secondary, with the likes of Eli Apple really starting to come on. Von Bell now in his second year as a sophomore, starting to come on. 20-yard plays. You hear us talk about that here on Film Room so often, is how few they've given up. Those are explosive plays. And so every defense and every offense is always going to talk about how many explosive plays of 20 yards or more can we get? How many can we stop? So let's take a look at defensively for Ohio State. We know they've got guys like Michael Bennett. We know they've got guys like Joey Bosa, who you'll see here on the end. Adolphus Washington. And Steve Miller actually played his best game here against Alabama. So walk us through this one real quick, too.
Well, you got to love just the action by what they do on defense. I love their front 4. They're active, they're athletic, they're strong. But right now, this is a great read by Darren. This is Darren Lee, number 43, coming downhill right now. Look, right now, Blake Sims has the open throw if he stops and makes the throw.
Pulls up in the pocket.
If he pulls up in the pocket, if he reads this correctly, then he can do that. Sort of like a little bit of a dash look with the tight end helping on the outside. But this is unbelievable recognition coming downhill fast right now to take away the edge from Blake Sims, who's trying to get outside.
Well, in Alabama, if we take a look right here, Alabama does not handle this well at the point of attack. And Joey Bosa, who they're very, very concerned with right here, they don't end up accounting for Darren Lee. But you're right. This was up to the quarterback. Now, if this is Marcus Mariota, this guy's going to stop. He's going to pull up right here, and he's going to get his eyes downfield. And there are throws to be made versus this coverage. Instead, without end up accounting
edge from Blake Sims, who's trying to get outside.
Well, in Alabama, if we take a look right here, Alabama does not handle this well at the point of attack. And Joey Bosa, who they're very, very concerned with right here, they don't end up accounting for Darren Lee. But you're right. This was up to the quarterback. Now, if this is Marcus Mariota, this guy's going to stop. He's going to pull up right here, and he's going to get his eyes downfield. And there are throws to be made versus this coverage. Instead, without having to pressure, without having to deal with any type of exotic blitzes, they're able to handle things at the point of attack. Now what we're going to see here, Kevin, from a defensive perspective, is you're going to see a 3-man front with linebackers walked up and sugared up. Question is, who's coming, who's dropping?
Well, this is the key. Whenever you have a talented front 4 and you're able to put pressure on the quarterback by not bringing anyone, when you introduce the idea of bringing pressure, it makes things hard on an offensive line, no matter how talented they are. Alabama's offensive line is very talented, but who are you going to block? Where are they coming from? Are they all coming? Are they all dropping? These guys up front are really athletic. They can rush the passer, and they can drop into coverage, which we see later on in the game, which actually hurts Alabama.
So what they end up doing now is the down guy, 88, Steve Miller here, they're going to end up dropping him off. dropping him off, and then they run a two-man stunt at the top right here between Michael Bennett and the outside linebacker. Watch up there at the top. And this is where they create the gap.
They're playing with the center turn, and this is your quarterback. You know this. Most of the time,
right there,
they're telling this center to turn either towards or away from the back, depending on the strength of your slide and pass protection. When this center turns this way and he runs across his face, he's taking that person, giving the linebacker Darren Lee a clear lane to get to the quarterback. This is a great blitz, it's great execution, and it happens on the fly. This center's got a decision to make. These guys all have to communicate up front.
So we've Amari Cooper here, he's going to come across on the shallow cross. They're going to man him up, but by not bringing this player and dropping him, they end up taking away the underneath crossing route. Right here, you see it right there. And they do the exact same thing with Steve Miller. So now, where do you go with the football? You're locked up here, you're locked up here. That's not a read right now with where his eyes are. No. These are all things, guys, and Coach and Matt Millen, that Marcus Mariota is going to have to account for as we take a look at what Ohio State brings to the table, the way they want to try and create some confusion within your pass protections, and then dropping guys to where they think you're going with the football.
Yeah, and I think the biggest piece of the puzzle, as you looked at both those plays, those are both zone blitzes. That's the first thing. And the second thing is both times they were accounting for the quarterback's feet.
Right.
You saw the shorter drop and the deeper drop. The backer sitting inside and defensive end coming out underneath. That was their ability to be able to handle all of them. And in this game, it's going to be huge.
Well, and they've got a variety of things. They look from a two shell, which basically means you got two high safeties, initial look, and then they're going to play either two deep, man under, which they can do, two deep zone. They can go to a single, like a man free, where he'll lock up here, and they can also do the traditional zone blitzes. And like I said, they may come here, 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 bring him off the edge, and drop him in coverage. So they do a variety of things from a coverage standpoint that cause confusion for a quarterback. One of the things that Oregon will do is continue to spread people out to see the coverage and to make them come from distance and to determine, again, initially shades in here to see which side the zone blitz may come from.
So the biggest piece of the puzzle is Ohio State. What they have is good team speed defensively. And they have guys on the outside like Steve Miller who can really run. And so when that happens, you're taking a guy like Miller, and you may drop him, or in one instance you saw the second play, when they dropped him back inside. What they're saying is, look, we'll handle you outside. We can take care of you with coverage. We think we can get pressure if we just bring four, regardless of how we do it. But we have the people in guys like Bell and Apple and Miller, and there's a bunch of guys in there who can just flat out fly to the ball, and they believe they can get to Mariota inside out. That'll be a huge key.
So right there, you've got two deep, man under. You've got man free, which is man across the board with a single high safety, and you've got zone blitz. Now, Coach Bellotti, I'm going to place blame on you, because you're the one that created this whole issue.
Your fault.
It's your fault when you hired Chip Kelly. But you hired him for a reason. And so now put yourself in a defensive coordinator's shoes. If you have the personnel, would you man up across the board and account for the quarterback's legs?
Absolutely. I think that the only way you can handle a team like Oregon, because they're going to spread you out and they're going to formation you and see what you get, is how do you cover the quarterback? How do you stop him from, and he is the most dangerous runner. Marcus Mariota is so dangerous, especially if you're playing pass defense with your back to the quarterback.
All right, well, everybody says it's easy when you got the last pen on the grease board, right?
It's true.
All right, so now let's flip the switch. Let's take a look at Ohio State on offense, Oregon on defense, and how do these two teams match up? What does Oregon try to do to slow down the third quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes? And the vertical passing game coming alive for the Ducks. Darren Carrington, Marcus Mariota, explosive plays through the air. Stick with us.
Who's in the history books? The National Championship presented by AT&T. Monday on ESPN.
And he just picks you apart. Mariota, big opening, left side, shows his running ability, and a touchdown. Mariota to throw. Touchdown! Perfectly thrown. Touchdown, Oregon. Touchdown, Marcus Mariota.
All right, we want to be quick, but we don't want to hurry. We take the seconds per play there, and that's been the slowest pace that Oregon has had in the last 5 seasons. Yards per game is up. the 2-minute touchdown drives. I think the explosive plays, the ability to put points on the board rapidly is certainly something that over the course of a game, in the course of a season, takes its toll. Now, there have been a lot of unknowns with the college football playoff. And the biggest unknown, perhaps, is having the big layoff between the end of the season and the semifinal, but now only getting a short time to prepare for the opponent. What type of strain does that put on Ohio State, Coach, as they face this tempoed offensive Oregon?
Well, you can't get ready for it in 1 week.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is you've got to practice all year against tempo. They do some tempo themselves, so that'll help them. One of the reasons that Oregon's a little bit slower this year, they're using more motion and shifting than they have in the past.
Okay.
And that's slowed them down a little bit. Typically, when you want to go full speed, you don't substitute, you don't shift, you don't motion.
All right, let's take a look at the tape here, and we're gonna take a series to illustrate, with 8:04 here left in the third, just to illustrate the pace of play and the speed at which they are operating. We're going to let it run here. We may pause it for a second as it runs here to point out a couple of things. But if you pay close attention to the clock, and we're going to pop it up. So now you see things going here. You've got your clock. This is from the end of the play, okay? But here's the thing you've got to pay close attention to. That's 6 seconds. Oregon's already lining up. So it's not so much about the time elapsed between the last play and the next play being snapped. It's the last play and lining up to run the next play.
Scott Frost has already called that play.
Right.
He's thinking about the next play. They're signaling to the line and the specialty receivers what the play is, so they all know they're all on the same page.
All right, so they're going to snap that one. About 15 seconds elapsed. But if you noticed, once again, they were at the line of scrimmage with about 8 to 10 seconds to prevent substitution on defense and to maintain and dictate the tempo of the game on their terms.
One of the hardest things to teach a team is to not reflect on what happened on the last play, but to go get your head right back to the sideline, see what the next play is going to be.
All right, so you see quickly, he's got the play, Scott Frost, the offensive coordinator, down to the signals. Marcus Mariota's getting it. Only 10 seconds has elapsed. They're already lined up. Away they go. And there's the motion that takes a little time, as you referenced.
It's exactly what we said. The motion, anytime you're going to move the formation, if you come up in a still set, you can snap the ball much quicker.
All right, clock's running. That's the end of the play. They went out of bounds. Marcus Mariota's already jogging over. He's getting the signal, which has taken place. He's out of the element now. Scott Frost is done. He's the first person in and the first person out.
They play left and right receivers, so these guys never change size. The interior receivers are the only ones that have to adjust, and the running back. Obviously, you see the play here. The defense is so tired physically and mentally, and that strain of having to defend quickly makes them over-pursue or miss angles.
Now, a lot of this, too, has come down to really downplaying verbiage. We want to get away from having wordy plays and phrases to the point where you referenced a right side receiver, a left side receiver. So they're memorizing plays, usually oftentimes just 1 or 2 words, to expedite the process.
Rat tail could be 3 receivers to the right. The play's going to go to the right. It's a play. It's a formation. It's a concept.
All right. How do you deal with the pace, Matt?
Well, for the same reason, with the same things that you guys are just talking about, defensively, they have to do the same thing. Now, keep in mind, you also have to marry defensively, you have to marry your front to your coverage behind. And so what we would do would be the same thing. So Kevin be already lined up. So there are some basics that you already know. First, you know you're going to have 5 offensive linemen. So they're going to line up. So we know going into it, we're going to bang something out for a base. So Kevin's already drawn up that we're going to be across the board. We're going to have our 4 down linemen. So we know that already. So as soon as that pops up, I'm looking to the sideline. There's 3 pieces of information that we have to know. I have to get that. It's the communication to Kevin to get that to him. So 1, I have to know down and distance, okay? Then I have to know field position. Then I have to know personnel. Give me my base call. So as soon as it happens, I'm going deuce, deuce, deuce. So I'm calling out my coverage. So we're all on the same page. That one call will tell Kevin also where he has to be. That's the first piece.
And deuce may mean to me, it may mean basically just over cover 2. So if I'm Ohio State's defense, I'm going to line up in an over front with a 3 technique and a 1 shade, 2 defensive ends, and we're going over. 2 in the back end.
Then I'm going to give the formation. So I'm going to go trips left. So I'm going to get my trips out 1, 2, 3, and I have my other corner on to the backside. So now I can disseminate my people. So Kevin's going to go. We're going to say we already said deuce. So we're going to adjust now to the 3 receiver side while still staying in a cover 2. So that's the piece of the puzzle that we think we have the communication out there okay already. Then on top of that, now we have to know exactly where the hash is. So the hash is sitting right here. We're playing to the field side all the way onto this side. So now a couple of things have happened already before we've ever snapped the ball.
And it only took you 2 minutes to explain that.
Exactly.
15 seconds has already gone by.
And so now, okay, so this is the second play of this series.
Right.
So now the ball is snapped, and whatever they do, they do. Now we come to the line of scrimmage again, and again, I have the same thing. What's happened because of the pace, Kevin and I are still trying to say the same thing, so on the same page. So he's going to look back at the defensive caller, and we start the process yet again. And basically, Kevin, you're going to still be in the same up front because we know we have 5 down linemen. Now it's up to for what down and distance is. So if I'm 2nd and 2, or if I'm whatever it was 3rd and 3, or whatever it may be, now I have to. I'm only got to have a small menu, and the menu is going to include what Kevin has to do and what we have to do behind it.
If you're Ohio State's defense, you have to get your 3 A's down: alignment, assignment, and adjustment. Now, we may know what the coverage is, and we may know what the front is, but now we have to get adjusted to what they show us. They came out in trips here. Okay, this safety has to come over. The linebackers have to shift. I mean, you've got all kinds of things that are going on here. I mean, you have to basically line up to basically what they're doing. That's the hard part. The hard part is making the adjustment on the fly and also thinking, okay, in this formation, what's going to hurt us? What do I have to do? Earlier in the game, you saw with Ohio State's defense, having trouble basically getting into their base stuff, reading and executing at a high tempo when the offense is going.
And what Mike and Tom were talking about defensively, you already know the personnel on the field, which means we have the same personnel on our side of the ball too. The difference is you can line them up all over the place. We have to be able to identify them. And Lugs, that presents a problem.
It does. What it does is take the defensive coordinator out of the game. Really, the players on the field have to make the decisions, have to be able to coach themselves, and they're afraid because the ball can be snapped at any time. Linebackers are afraid to look back for a signal to change coverage because they got to make sure they're not getting beat off the snap.
By the way, the two of you just had 40 points scored on you within 2.5 minutes.
But we were lined up nicely, I got to tell you that.
Yeah, to illustrate just how quickly and how you have to respond and react and make a play. Here's that vertical passing game we were talking about that's really come alive for Oregon, mostly due to Darren Carrington's emergence. You look at the receptions per game, but the yards per game, and then those big plays. Again, we go to plays of 20 yards or more, explosive plays, all part of this Oregon Duck offense. And one of the things to the point of Kevin and Matt is you've got to digest all this stuff and dissect all this stuff, and then they'll give you a wrinkle, a formation that might be a little different. So now can you line up right to be able to cover everything? As we take a look at the tape right here, from a formation standpoint, you've got an extra guy here and then 3 receivers over to the boundary.
So actually 4. This is a tight end here, so it's end over, 3 receivers in a bunch set here. That's why this is a first down play, but Florida State is late getting in line. You can see these guys looking back here like, where am I supposed to go? What am I going to do? And they're trying to get over and get a line to this. As we watch the play develop, they're throwing the pump fake. This is fake quick screen and go. You can see these guys come off the line, stutter step, and you see Mariota here off the little fake, and he's going to pump with his shoulders, and that forces these guys to come up. They're a man short out here because they did not have the secondary rotation they needed because there's no receiver to that side of the field.
Right, so now they've got an easy shot down the field. Everybody's peeking. They're misaligned. From the snap, there was no chance right there.
Let's take a look again. This is a little bit of play action right here. And you can see the play fake in the backfield. You can see right here, it looks like they're in 2 deep look. I don't know if it's man or not. We're going to take a look here. But these guys have to sort of decide how they're going to handle this crosser. They should banjo it probably, but they screw up right here. Here's the mistake by the linebacker. One of the two should have walled him or carried him across. They do not. And Mariota, and this is the mark of a great quarterback, with all these guys running these routes, he sees this. He sees right down the middle of the field and finds the wide open guy where they made the mistake.
This looks initially, and again, this was the issue with Florida State not being able to create pressure, because initially this is all covered. Right. They've done a nice job here, Florida State, to this point. They're expecting this pocket to be collapsed. It's not. Carrington catches the cross route underneath, and away he goes.
And makes the guy miss, too. For a big guy with range, he can run. Now, the hole shot. Let's go back for a second. They work on this all the time. Into the short side of the field, they love this. If they get a quick reaction from the corner right here on this play fake, and as you watch this come out, the tight end is going to
flat route to hold him.
Go in the flat right now, and they're going to read this guy. He covers, he comes up, he declares too soon. The safety's back here in somewhat decent position, but watch this throw. Marcus, by settling him right in here, by throwing him in the hole, in that no-man's zone right there, over the top, this guy's taking a poor angle. I'll tell you what, there's no chance for him to make that play.
Again, the ball's out of their hand quick. They've snapped the ball quick. There's such distinct advantages offensively. And again, as you mentioned, in 1 week, very, very difficult to deal with this.
Yeah.
Yep, no question about it. All right, great playmakers for Oregon. We just outlined them for you. How about for Ohio State? Devin Smith and this man, Ezekiel Elliott, maybe the most important player on the field for Ohio State.
Well, that was fast. It's not just fast. The Brother Business Smart is the fastest and smallest inkjet in his class.
Looks to throw from the 50. Guns it long, going Devin Smith toward the end zone. Got it! No, he hands it Elliott straight ahead, wide open. 15, 10-5 touchdown, Jalen Marshall.
As we take ESPN next level in the Ohio State run game, and Ezekiel Elliott, who's become the bell cow in the backfield, really taking pressure off of Cardale Jones. Look at the yards per carry. Now, that number is not a typo. Almost 13.5 yards per carry between the tackles, outside of the tackles as well. So you see he's a home run threat. Rush TDs between the tackles so he can pound it in there between the box there and make some plays with some power for Ohio State. So you've got the inside run game to contend with. You've got the outside run game to contend with. So as we turn on the tape here and we take a look at Ohio State versus Alabama, the fatal flaw for Alabama in this game was poor tackling and an inability to set the edge. Watch Ezekiel Elliott here as they go formation into the boundary, run weak to the field.
Yeah, so they're giving themselves, formationally, they're giving themselves room to be able to work with the field. That's the first thing. The second thing, you see, both safeties are sitting deep. So that means run support is going to be a little slow at best. Third point, and maybe the most important point, the development of Ezekiel Elliott from the start of the season to now is like night and day.
Sure.
The light has come on, and they have great confidence. They also do a great job, does Ohio State offensively, of their receivers blocking and understanding what they have to do. This is a fantastic job. He starts the first piece, okay? Now he gets off. Now he looks for the safety.
Right.
He's turning this over to Ezekiel Elliott, saying Elliott can beat him by himself, and he was right. And then the fourth thing is this. They're always going to try to get another blocker into the scheme. This is an even front. Now, against Oregon, you won't see an even front. It's going to be the odd front. So the guards are going to have to pull. In this particular instance, they pulled the center all the way around to account for the extra block around the edge, and then Elliott does the rest all by himself.
Come on, number 7, Ryan Anderson. Make that play on the boundary.
So big explosive plays right there. Now here he is. Now we're going to go to the wide side of the field for Ezekiel Elliott. Again, the same stretch look. All right, this time they do not pull the uncovered center, which they did on the previous play. But again, his ability to not only outrun to the edge, but then break tackles.
Yeah, and so what they did, instead of pulling the extra guy, they said, forget that. We're going to leave him unblocked, and Elliott's going to beat him.
Right.
That's the same concept that Oregon uses.
Sure.
The exact same thing. Again, they caught him in the 2 deep. Both safeties are sitting down. He's trying to spin down late. But they do a great job on the perimeter of the receivers and other backs do a great job in space of getting on blocks and standing. Now, they don't have to be devastating, Tom.
Right, yeah.
All they have
just
to
dance
do,
with them.
Just stay in front of them, and they do a great job.
And there's the unblocked guy. They're going to say, we're going to beat him.
And Elliott is going to beat that guy. And he does. But in this particular instance, he just runs right past him.
Now, who is that Ezekiel Elliott's running over?
That is an outstanding player.
That's Landon Collins.
Exactly.
Ezekiel Elliott ran right over him.
And this kid, he's just tapping into what he can be.
All right, here's the bowling pin effect. Watch the crack block take out 2 players right here. He comes in. Just take a look at that outside wide receiver block to Matt's point, taking guys out.
Trey DePriest right here. He's the unblocked guy. This is his play to make over the top. Here's what happens. He gets caught up inside the wash, and then because they do a great job of blocking with those receivers, he's not able to come over the top. Now, it's not a good job on the back end also when he comes down. You still have to try to squeeze this thing. He's still in a position to make this play. He's trying to squeeze it back inside because DePriest doesn't get over there. He's not in that position, and it's 98 and out the gate.
And Evan Spencer, who is the unsung hero of this receiving core, great blocker, has done everything Urban Meyer has asked of him. But that crackback block, the one that's coming down on you, what are you telling Oregon, guys, when they're seeing that tight split and they know it's coming? How are you reacting to that defensively?
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell this defense is that if Ohio State's offense thinks they can get the edge and did succeed in getting the edge on Bama, they're going to believe they can get the edge on you, Oregon's defense. So we have it drawn up here, and they're going to find creative ways, whether it's pulling the uncovered man, whether it's single blocking on the outside, whether it's climbing someone up to the linebacker. They're going to do a great job in engaging these people on the perimeter of your defense and occupying them and, like you said, getting in their way to start out with.
You better crack, replace well. But one of the things that's going to help Oregon is they're primarily a zone team. So they're not going to be as influenced by the inside release by the wide receiver. The other thing, they've got some big, agile guys on the ends. Buckner and Armstead are 6'7", 6'8", 290. They move well. Baldacci inside. Balducci, excuse me. And the outside linebackers are big guys. Christian French, Tony Washington. They're 6'4", 250 kind of guys. They're more hybrid defensive linemen than hybrid defensive backs. So they're physical enough to help on the run game. I think the real question is just, can the linebackers scrape well enough to stop? I know that Oregon right now is looking at Ezekiel Elliott and saying, that is our job. We've got to stop him. We have to commit all of our people right now to the run defense. But you got to be careful because the shot process for Ohio State, they can throw the ball deep. They've got receivers averaging 26 yards a catch this year. I mean, it's pretty amazing. But you got to stop the run first. They're committed to that.
Now, Coach, they're running zone right there, but versus a three-man front, it's a little bit of a different look for both of those guards. And now your uncovered players are both of your guards.
Yes.
For Ohio State.
And typically when you see that in the NFL, the number one thing offenses want to do is they want to go this way and then hit the vertical creases in the defense. Against a 3-4, any down team that has three people and they're balanced across the front, they're going to try to take advantage of running downhill through this A and B gap area.
They won't always line up in a true 3-4 though. They'll slide to shades and bring one of these defensive ends down. The one advantage they have, not from a run game, from a pass game, is you don't know which of these ends may be coming in terms of pass rush.
To be honest with you, fellas, it's going to come down to tackling. Alabama didn't tackle well. Oregon's going to have to tackle well.
In space.
In space. And Ezekiel Elliott's not an easy guy to deal with. So now let's transition to the Ohio State passing game. Big plays through the air. Devin Smith has become the go-to player for Cardale Jones. Now, Dontre Wilson and Jalen Marshall, they're more of your scat, space, slot-type players. Michael Thomas, Devin Smith are your big outside guys that you want to stretch. You want to go up in contested matchups. And in my opinion, seeing Cardale Jones in his first action against Michigan in the regular season finale and realizing the security blanket that he has in a guy like Devin Smith, where you got confidence that either going to be a catch or it is going to be an incomplete pass. That gives you tremendous confidence as a quarterback.
And two things have to come into play for that. First of all, you have to have a quarterback who has a big enough arm to be able to have the confidence to throw it deep all the time, which Cardale Jones in 2 games has proved that. The second thing is you have to have a guy who can run by coverage. And
there you go.
Smith doesn't. I mean, looking on the top side, all this is just a simple 9 route. And all we're saying is, look, safety sitting away the other side. They're dropping down to inside looking for a combination coverage. You're locked up man-to-man. If you're even, you're gone. You're leaving.
That's right. And really, Alabama in this particular set, they made it easy on him. Once they decided to keep him in the center field, they don't shade him, and he's up in press, now you know you've got a huge window here if you're Cardale Jones.
What people forget about him is he's stronger than you think.
Right.
And he really does a nice job. Now, this ball actually is a little underthrown.
Sure.
But he was already passing by that time, so it didn't make much of a difference. Cardale Jones is comfortable throwing the deep ball. He's also comfortable to throwing it from anywhere in the field. Look, this is a far side hash throw. Now, that ball, again, was a little bit underthrown. The safety could have made a better play on it.
It's a dangerous throw,
It's a dangerous throw, but it's a good throw and a big arm to be able to make that thing. You're talking about 50 yards to the far side corner. that takes a little bit of a cannon to throw that thing.
Well, and it goes to my point earlier. He's made up his mind he's going to throw it. He's got confidence that at the very least it's going to be an incomplete pass. My guy down there is not going to let it get intercepted.
So in this game, because they like to throw the deep throws, your safeties are going to have two things have to happen. Your safeties are going to have good range, which Oregon safeties do. And secondly, your corners, when you walk up, you have to get hands on them. You can't just let them run by you.
Sure.
Make them be physical. Use the sideline as your friend. Squeeze them as much as you can. If you're going to try to take that 9-route shot most of the time, you've got to make that a window about this big to throw it into.
And now the challenge for Oregon, if you make that commitment, is how do you handle the slot in the whole middle of the field being wide open? So you pick your poison to some degree.
Absolutely.
So we see this throw here. He's got confidence. Bit of a dangerous throw. The Alabama safety doesn't get off the hatch, and Devin Smith makes a play. Now, when it comes to decision-making, how critical in this matchup, if Oregon looks at this tape and says, wow, I don't know if Alabama really made it overly difficult for Cardale Jones. Decision-making for Cardale Jones, man.
Well, I think what Cardale Jones has done extremely well is the decision-making is this. If it's not there, get rid of it.
Right.
Live for another down. He has done a fantastic job of just saying, you know what, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm going to throw it into the third row. That is smart football. Live for another down. You can always make up with another throw the next play or the play after that. Right. Or get off the field and let your defense play, because their defense has been playing extremely well. So I think what Cardale Jones has done and what they've coached him to do at this point is to just go ahead. If it's there, take it. If it's not, get rid of it.
Yeah, he doesn't take chances with the football.
Smart.
And that's the most important thing. And so how will Oregon's defense now, as we transition, handle Ohio State on offense? And can they create some protection issues in a similar fashion to what they did against Florida State? Stay with us.
Cook underneath, losing the ball. Winston straight back. Loses the ball.
Short side, throwing back shoulder, and it's broken up.
Loses the football. Oregon's got it.
Now gets pressured, trying to get away from people. Can't. Slips. Loses the ball. Oregon picks it up as a chance to score.
And it's intercepted.
It is intercepted.
Well, as we prepared you for the semifinal, we went over some of the exotic things and different looks that Oregon likes to do on defense in terms of pressures as well as zone blitzes. And you take a look at the results over the last 4 games, really improving, particularly on getting off the field on third down. You look at the opponent's conversion percentage there. So great improvements for Oregon, really coming alive. And one of the things that they like to do is they may get into what looks like a 3-man down front. And they're going to sugar up the linebackers and walk them up. So again, the question is, who's coming? Where is he coming from? And if somebody's dropping out of that down front alignment, who's it going to be? And can the quarterback recognize it? So let's take a look here versus Florida State. This is in the red area, and this is what I was referring to when they walk up here. You're going to have a guy walking up, a guy walking up. But which one of these guys could be coming out? Let's snap it here for a second. Okay, so it ends up being him. Now watch what this linebacker does. He widens because he knows he's got help here with this and this over the top. So you don't have a big pressure in terms of being overloaded from a man standpoint up front. They've got enough people to block this. They just don't do a good job of it on the edge, Kevin.
They don't do a good job on the edge, and the one thing that we're not talking about is we don't know the size of the people on defense for Oregon. Oregon has the luxury of having 3 down linemen that are all over 6'7" up front. They're all 300 pounds. They're all giant human beings, but they're not big slugs. They're athletic players. Their defensive ends, or the guys, the outside linebackers, so to speak, are probably 6'4", 6'5".
They're hybrid guys. They're more
hybrid guys. So these guys coming from depth, this is like a 3-4 scheme jack stand-up linebacker coming off the edge. Puts a lot of pressure on the tackles to really get depth to protect that upfield shoulder.
Especially when they're coming from width. I mean, this is a speed guy coming from width, and that tackle's got to kick out. But we're going to pause it right here for just a second. Where is there to go with the football?
There's nowhere to go. Right. Dropping out the nose tackle here takes the pressure, like you said, off of the inside linebackers on the underneath coverage, and it gives them just one more body to take care of a shallow cross or a late breaking route or a safety valve for a quarterback who gets in trouble from edge pressure.
Now, here we're going to have a similar look once again. You're going to have the down middle guy going to drop out. Now, watch what this player ends up doing. He ends up riding the tight end further than he should have. Because technically, right here, the tight end should be open because he rides this player too far. He should be right here, but it doesn't matter because there's nowhere to go. The pressure up front, Oregon's done such a nice job of keys and assignments here, but then rushing the passer at the same time.
When you come from depth and width and you come slightly late, look at what happens to the tackle here. Yeah. He gets occupied with the large body that's lined up in a 4-eye next to him. He never even sees this outside pressure from Christian French.
So there's an opportunity to go to Nick O'Leary here with the football.
Tony Washington, rather.
And the ball's, and he's got people in his grill.
He has people that are open, but he can't get the ball to him. The nose guard does a great job of leaking out late to cover the back out of the backfield. It's a really good job by the Oregon defense.
All right, so let's take a look at Oregon here once again. This time they're going to run what looks to be what's called quarter, half. So you're going to have a quarter of the field here, quarter of the field here, and then half the field here by this safety. But again, the alignment of all of the defenders for Oregon, they're keeping the ball in front of them, eyes in front of them to the quarterback in their zone concepts, and then this guy right here gets into the face of the quarterback, nowhere to go with the football.
Late pressure is still good pressure, especially when initially you're only rushing 3 linemen. It means you have 8 guys back in coverage. Right. So there's nowhere to go with the football. Linebacker does a great job, comes up late, puts late pressure on the quarterback, and complete pass.
Guys, lot to diagnose there for any quarterback, particularly one just going on essentially his 3rd start. What does Cardale Jones have to be aware of and be fearful of when he's seeing these looks up front?
Well, he and the offensive line need to be on the same page. That's the biggest thing. So he trusts the protection. The best pass rushers are these outside ends for Oregon or these defensive tackles, defensive ends, Buckner and Armstead. Those guys, and French and Washington make the most plays for them because they get isolated on a tackle in space. Balducci is a plugger type guy. The backers, the safeties are playmakers too, but they're going to see a 2 shell, and he has to understand he has to be on the same page with his receivers about the protection and then how they're going to attack that 2 deep coverage.
Because what you're going to see is a combination of coverages. You'll see the 2 shell, and within that 2 shell, there are 3 predominant coverages. One, they're going to have just to play a straight cover 2. The second thing they're going to do is they'll play quarters behind that thing, and then they'll play a 2-man. And so all those things look the same, but what they're doing up front is run differently. On top of that, they do a great job in zone blitz schemes. That's really when Oregon is at its best, using what they have on the outside in terms of rush and drop. And so the best way to attack this thing, first and foremost for Ohio State, is up front. They've got to be physical running the ball. If they can run the ball first and establish the run game, then you have to make some decisions on the back end of how you're going to attack that.
One of the other things, when you have a 2 deep shell, those are the areas of the field that you want to attack, but the problem is those are down the field. So now you've got to trust your protection to allow the routes to develop to attack the deep middle, the deep hole shots on either side, because initially with 5 underneath cover or more, the quick throws are not there.
They're Florida State wasn't able to do that.
No, they're not. And you have to be patient, and you have to be able to protect for a longer time to establish the opportunity.
How critical, Matt, is it for Cardale Jones not to get caught up in which one of those defensive linemen is the one that's dropping?
Yeah, and he'll be able to see that initially. What they're going to do is they're going to come to the line of scrimmage and they're going to call their protection. Right. Who's taking care of what?
Big on big. Who's got it?
He will understand that. Now, he may not know exactly which one's coming, which one isn't, but he knows what side's protected and which one isn't. You saw them with their turn protection inside. It was just basically a base 3-3, like 3 guys to this side, the backs to the other side, something like that. So that part should be covered. His main concern, though, when you're talking about with what Coach is talking about, in the 2 shells, when you do have the deep shots, understand what that means. That means whether it's quarters or halves or quarter halves, whatever it is, the base is your safety sitting deep with 5 people underneath. So what Mike is saying is for Ohio State to look there are smaller windows to throw to the underneath side, and your shots really are down the field between, like there's a hole in the middle, a hole here, a hole in the outside.
And those aren't high percentage throws.
They're not high percentage throws, but they have a quarterback who's a big arm who can make those throws.
Big arm. That's it. That's what he loves to do, is throw the ball deep.
Well, there's no question each of these teams offensively have gotten here in two different ways. And to credit both coaches, Urban Meyer's done it with three. Count them, 3 quarterbacks to get to this point. Mark Helfrich, he's had the best player in college football. 2 different avenues. Stay with us. And what a fun ride it has been to get to this point as we finish off the 2014 season here in the newly minted 2015 year. So there's a lot of coaches involved in this. Assistants, head coaches, one coach in Urban Meyer that's won 2 national championships, an assistant in Mark Helfrich that's coached in big games. From your perspective, what's the X factor as it relates to coaches? Who's got the advantage here?
Well, it's hard to vote against Urban Meyer simply because he is so successful. And this year he's done a tremendous job coaching. But I have to agree with you, too. You have to consider that Mark Helfrich coached in 4 straight BCS games as a coordinator for Oregon, including a national championship, and won his only bowl game as a head coach. So I think it's a little bit closer than people think, but I'd have to give the edge to Urban.
All right, well, these 2 coaches certainly have done a wonderful job getting to this point. Well, now, pretty soon the hay is going to be in the barn, and it will be time for the players to execute the game plan. So, Coach, we will start with you. We talked about the X factor in coaching. What's your X factor as far as players are concerned to produce in this game?
Everybody's going to talk about Marcus Mariota, but to me, it's the running game of Oregon. It's Thomas Tyner, Royce Freeman, those 2 guys, and having both of them healthy for this game will be very, very important. But that running game makes Oregon go. The fact that they can hand the ball off, run it inside or outside, sets up the play-action passing game, and then allows Mariota to pick up the pieces.
Kevin, how about you? What's your X factor?
Corey Smith. Look, nothing is more demoralizing when you have starters, studs on your team that are down making plays in special teams. This is a page out of Steve Spurrier's handbook for the opposing team to look on the field and they see Javon Curse and Mike Peterson covering the kickoff. It just demoralizes you.
You want to be talking about demoralizing. Nothing demoralizes a team more than when they run the football right down their throats. DeForest Buckner, number 44 for Oregon, is going to have to play his best game. He, along with his down linemen, are going to have to be physical against a much improved Ohio State offensive line and a very talented offensive line. To me, that's going to be the whole key.
Might be the most improved offensive football team in all of college football. So my X factor is going to be Cardale Jones. He's done it to this point. He's avoided the catastrophic mistake. He's a deceptively good runner for a big pocket guy. And Matt, as you referenced, he can make the vertical throws. The big key is to, again, live to play the next down and understand that you don't have to carry the entire offense on your back. All right, real quick, let's go around the horn here. Kevin, who do you like?
I like Oregon. I like Oregon in this matchup. I like Marcus Mariota. I think he's been flawless. I think the running game is good. I think defense is great. Oregon.
I like Oregon, but Ohio State's going to win.
Whoop. Quack, quack, quack. Going with Oregon?
Duck.
Going with Oregon, too, but I think it's going to be a really close game and a great game for the national championship.